And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang has the day off. He'll be back with us on Monday. 800-222-5222 is telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former member of the California Assembly and a candidate for California's 47th Congressional District. That is coastal Orange County. You can follow him on X at Scott Baugh CA47. Scott Baugh, welcome.
Hey, John, good to be with you again.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. And I've got to say, your name popped into my head last week when I was on vacation, sitting on a cruise ship. And my phone started going off like a slot machine because everyone was sending me the Katie Porter video. And then when the second video dropped, the same thing happened to my phone. So I'm sitting there trying to enjoy the ocean. I'm trying to enjoy the vacation. I'm trying to enjoy the peace. And all I have is Katie Porter screaming at everyone on my phone. And I thought to myself, the least surprised person on planet Earth today has to be Scott Baugh.
Absolutely. We've seen that behavior. She's simply a bully. And, during the campaign, when she would campaign and advertise on TV, her polling would go down. She's just not that likable of a person. But when she just did attack ads or had somebody else speak on her behalf, her polling would go up. The bottom line is she's a bully, and bullies are driven by some insecurity somewhere. We could speculate what that is, but the bottom line is every aspect of her life, from the stories with her husband to how she treats staff, and even a lot of her Democrat colleagues don't enjoy her company. So it wasn't surprising to me at all.
It's interesting to me that they all clearly personally hated her. And they all had some unique story, some individual story of a run-in with her where she didn't treat them very well. But when her name was on the ballot and they had the opportunity to do something about it, they kept quiet about it. It wasn't until she was expendable to them that they told the truth.
That's right. And the first crack we saw in that expendability was the race against Adam Schiff. And of course, she outspent me by $20 million, and I'm happy I was able to drain her account because she had very little money left over to act as a bully to Adam Schiff. In fact, quite the contrary happened. Adam had more money, and he was able to frame her. And so, listen, when she's a bully and in charge and has all the money in the world and she can hide, she does okay. But when the real Katie Porter shows up, it's not so good for her.
It really goes to show you how much power money has in politics, because she was able to fly under the radar. Her personality never changed. She's the same person today that she was when she ran for U.S. Senate, that she was when she ran for U.S. Congress, that she was, I'm sure, as a professor at UCI. But if you have the money to put out a narrative that just tells everyone that reality isn't reality, you can win elections, and your storyline can be the prevailing storyline because you just flood the zone and overwhelm the truth.
That's exactly what happened. Elizabeth Warren and her son were fundraisers for Katie Porter. She had $29 million, and she just kept reloading the coffers and kept firing all the weapons and controlling the narrative. And so you're right. You would like to think the voters could see through it, but sometimes they only see what they see on TV, and if the opponent doesn't have enough money to compete, you don't have to match, but to compete, well, then, the outcome could be predictable.
Put your state legislator hat on here for a second, because you were in leadership in Sacramento. You had to negotiate tough things like the budget and those sorts of things. You had to sit across the table from the other party and work out a deal. You work with the governor. It's not just the legislature that deals with itself. You have to make sure that the executive branch is on board if you're going to put something like a budget through. I assume that those negotiations get quite heated at times. You have to trust one another. You have to know that if someone says they're going to do something, that they actually follow through and do it. And it's something where trust is at a real valued commodity. Could you imagine in a tough budget year sitting there trying to work through the numbers, trying to work through the budget with Katie Porter as the governor of California leading the executive branch? Do you think the state would function?
No, it would be just like her personality today. She would be a bully. She would threaten to veto any bill that a Democrat legislator brought forward, even if it was a good bill, if they disagree with her on a single point. And so, no, she'd be an absolute disaster as a governor, and it would be unpleasant for all involved, including people in her own party.
It's really amazing to me how far we've fallen when you look at this field of candidates where no one has really broken through. No one has really taken the lead in any real sort of way. Katie Porter had been finishing in first place, but I think that that was more of a function of her spending a lot of money on her U.S. Senate race and having higher name ID. A certain element is that Kamala Harris was expected to be a candidate where they just spent over $1 billion promoting her nationwide, so no one would have higher name ID than her. I think she scared some of the candidates out of the race. But right now, when you look at this field, it's like trying to figure out who the tallest building in Omaha is. And you look back at past governors where people really did understand the material. People really did. They read the books. They knew what they were getting involved with. And now it's like you just have this group of people that are clueless.
Well, there's a lot going on in California, so I'm not assuming that Katie Porter is going to be our governor just because there's other people not in the race yet. I still anticipate other people getting in the race, and a lot can change in the time that's left here. John, you know the lawsuits against the state of California and in Orange County by the Department of Justice. They're going after cleaning up the rolls. And when we get the rolls cleaned up, it's harder for them to do the ballot harvesting and engage in shenanigans. And so I'm not giving up hope here yet that Katie will be our governor. I think we got a lot to fight for.
What is your take on Prop 50? Do you think Prop 50, we're going to see the same thing with Prop 50 that we saw with Katie Porter, where they're making an indefensible argument? They're making the argument that in order to save democracy, you have to fix elections. And they're assuming that they have the money to just overwhelm the other side, and they're just going to win with a weak argument.
Well, John, it looks that way today that they're leading in the polling because they're far outpacing the opposition in fundraising. They spent well over $100 million, and I think the opposition's down in the 40s and struggling to find more money because of what the polling says. The turnouts look pretty strong for Democrats. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Prop 50 passes, but I think they're going to regret passing Prop 50. And the reason they're going to regret it is once a governor gets involved in trying to gerrymander districts, and by the way, they would gerrymander districts to get us down to 4 Republican representatives out of 52. And that is an aggressive and really unseemly gerrymander that deprives and disenfranchises millions of voters. But because he's doing that, John, other governors in other states are responding in kind. You see Missouri already picked up a congressional seat. Indiana's looking to pick up a couple. North Carolina one. Florida, when they come back in session, will do the same thing. And so when we hyper-partisanize something like Gavin Newsom has done to Prop 50, you are sowing the whirlwind, and you're going to reap it.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that argument. I also think that what he's going to do is he's going to set off a bomb within that Democratic caucus, because the state of California is going to lose between 3 and 5 congressional seats in the next reapportionment, which means they're going to have to draw some people out. And if they go back to the independent commission, which I don't think that they will, but let's just assume for a second that they do, you're going to draw a lot of your own people out. You're going to dump some of your own people into districts with some of your own people. Everyone is going to look at every other member of that delegation as a potential rival. I don't know how you have any trust at all within that delegation. People are going to lose their jobs. People are going to have to lay their staffs off. They know this is coming. I don't see how you have any cohesion within that caucus. And in fact, I don't see how you get anything other than backstabbing and fighting and people not trusting one another. That's what he's doing.
Well, John, you're just teasing me now. It's like I think we'd like to see Democrats turning on each other like that, and they likely will. But think about this: that reapportionment wouldn't happen until 2032 under Prop 50. And so the Democrats don't care about 2032. They care about power today. They care about picking up those 3 to 5 seats and getting control of Congress today. And they'll say and do whatever they have to do and spend all the money they have to spend in order to get that outcome. But I think that it's going to backfire on them, and they'll regret the day they did it.
We're speaking with former Republican Assembly Leader Scott Baugh. Assemblyman, in San Francisco, one of the local papers is reporting that State Senator Scott Wiener is expected to announce as soon as next week that he will be challenging the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, for Congress in her congressional district that covers much of the city and county of San Francisco. He had publicly been saying that he's going to wait until she retires and he's going to allow her to retire on her own timeline. She has not announced a retirement. In fact, she has a campaign account open that leads you to believe that, I guess, at least on paper, she says that she's running for re-election. She certainly has given no indication that she has plans on doing anything else. It looks like he's going back on his word, and he is not going to allow her to retire. He's going to run against her in a primary. In part, this decision is being driven by another progressive challenger, a candidate who used to work for AOC back in the day, who said that Nancy Pelosi is not progressive enough. What do you make of this shot across the bow?
Well, I think that it could be a shot across the bow. On the other hand, he could be reading the tea leaves right. And when he made his commitment, he probably assumed she was going to retire before she was 80. How old is she now? It's like he didn't wait. I assume he didn't plan on her running all the way into the mid 80s and up to 90 years of age. So, I think it's time for Nancy Pelosi to retire and let somebody else younger come through. But I can't speculate on what Scott Wiener knows and what he doesn't know. And I don't think that Nancy Pelosi would be particularly afraid or concerned about the AOC candidate. She's plenty progressive for that district, and so I don't think the voters there would buy it that she's not progressive enough.
There seems to be a real battle going on in that party right now over the issue of age, where candidates who had been around a long time are being pushed aside for the next generation of Democratic candidates who aren't those New Deal Democrats that had been in office for many years. The new crowd, they're very hostile towards Israel. Many of them are willing to openly regard themselves as being a socialist candidate, not a capitalist candidate. And they say it's time for the older generation to move aside. And if you won't step aside, we're going to push you aside. And that's not just happening in San Francisco. That's happening all over with them. I would imagine that if you want to talk about bad blood, that's going to lead to bad blood.
It will, John, but it's actually good news for my party in the sense that let them try to push the older generation aside and let them even be successful. What are they left with? They're left with this party of socialists, and we saw that even in last election when Donald Trump got elected. The American people didn't want socialism, and they don't want it now. It's not part of our DNA. And if the new generation of people wants to continue to push a socialist, far-left, progressive agenda, well, then Republicans will remain in power for a long time.
What's crazy to me is that we see what happens when socialists are elected. Look at the city of Chicago, which pushed out an incumbent Democratic mayor, and they replaced her with a socialist candidate that the teachers' unions wanted. And now that guy is sitting at, 8% approval rating?
Yeah.
And now New York wants to do the same thing. It's crazy to me that these people don't read the papers.
Exactly, but it's what happens when a party gets co-opted by sort of a religious fervor, and progressivism became a religious fervor, and they're having a hard time shaking loose of that and getting back to a rational agenda, and that's why Republicans continue to do well. In most every state except California.
We're a little slow to learn on certain things.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens in New York City, because that election, I think, is over at this point. The spread is just too wide between the socialist candidate and the former Governor Cuomo. He ran on the government owning the means of production with the supermarkets being at the top of the list. Now, I don't know how you do that as a mayor of a city where you just go in and use eminent domain, I guess, and you say, oh, Ralph's, thanks, it was nice knowing you, but we're taking this over and it's now going to be the City of New York grocery store and they're going to be operating everything, so take your stuff and get out. I don't know how this even happens.
They don't. There's constitutional problems with it, but, the private sector may solve his problem for him. They just may leave. They may take a lot of the wealthy folks that are leaving and taking their tax revenue and going to Florida and other states, and pretty soon they're going to have budget constraints, and there's not going to be stores to go to under the threat that he has there. So the free market may solve his problem just by the threat of what he wants to do.
And I don't know if national Democrats are paying as close of attention to him and to what's going on in Chicago and what potentially could happen in California, God forbid, if Katie Porter gets elected. But we know, just given the shift in population, that places like Florida and Texas and Idaho, they're going to gain seats in the next reapportionment. And if you start putting socialist candidates who believe that the government should own the means of production and the police should be abolished and jails should be abolished and there should be an eviction moratorium, people don't have to pay the rent, you can't kick them out, you're going to see even more people move to all of those red states. And the blue states, if they think they're going to lose between 3 and 5 congressional seats, it could be more if there's another COVID-style mass exodus.
I think there is, and we're seeing it. And on top of that, John, you see a shift in the Hispanic voters voting more Republican because they're more capitalist oriented. They're not socialist oriented. And so I think, again, I'm very bullish on our prospects for the future in our party. And the Democrats, I think they're going to be in the wilderness for a long time because they just can't figure out what they really want to believe.
Well, and once you control everything, you start to get sloppy. And if they're willing to nominate a Katie Porter type of candidate to be governor of California, there's no one minding the store. It's just absentee landlordism. And that's when the voters smack you down. You never know when it's going to happen. It happens we saw it with the recall of Gray Davis. We saw it with Prop 13. You see it from time to time where you can push people and push people and push people, but you can only push so far. And once you push them one step too far, they lash out.
Yeah, we're seeing that in the polling too. A lot of Democrats are saying, "Wow, I'm not buying into that agenda." They're not willing to embrace the Republicans quite yet, but they're certainly not enthusiastic about what the Democrats are doing.
All right, the least surprised person on planet Earth from last week's news cycle, former Assembly Republican leader Scott Baugh. You can catch him on X at Scott Baugh CA47. Scott, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, John. You too. Bye.
It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show on this Jimmy Buffett Friday. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to listen to us all weekend long, that's easy to do. Just get out your handy-dandy iPhone, subscribe to the podcast edition of this program. You can listen to us on the airplane. You can listen to us on the cruise ship. And I guess if you're Lauren Sanchez, you can listen to us on the spaceship. Wherever you are, you can bring us with you. So subscribe to the podcast edition of this program. Now it's time to make a couple of listeners very happy. 790 KABC welcomes Gino Vanilli to the Saban Theater on October the 30th. Tickets are on sale right now at AXS.com. However, if you're caller number 9 right now at 888-790-5222, that's 888-790-5222, you'll win a pair of tickets to the show. All of this furnished by our friends at the Saban at the Canyon, where music meets the soul. Good luck dialing. We have 30 more minutes to go of the John Phillips Show. Seneca Scott joins us next. Don't you go anywhere. It's the John Phillips Show on this Jimmy Buffett Friday. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the founder of Neighborhoods Together Oakland And the man who was responsible for the recall of former Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao. You can follow him on X at Seneca Speaks 21. Seneca Scott, welcome.
Hey, John. Well, good to be back.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. Well, I guess the more things changed, the more things stayed the same, and the city of Oakland is now looking for a new police chief.
Yeah, we are.
What happened this time?
Oh, well, you came to the right place. It's a police commission. It's obvious that it's the police commission in the negotiated settlement agreement where our police are pretty much spending all of their time in internal affairs or arguing with the commission over whether they should have rifles and bearcats or not. I'll give you an example that's a great one, that what they tell themselves. The police commission know that they're being blamed. So the top police commissioner, keep in mind, Oakland has 4 police commissions, where we only mandated to have 1. But this particular review board or whatever they're called, and the announcement at City Hall when they were talking about, Police Chief Garner, who's to blame, here's what he said, John. He says, I can tell you that we had a great relationship with the police chief because we spent countless hours with him. And I thought to myself, what police chief wants to spend countless hours with a police commission arguing over basic equipment? Therein lies the answer. These people are so unself-aware and have such an overblown sense of importance of themselves. They think it's okay to not only spend countless hours with a police chief doing something that's not his primary job, but then they brag about it and use it to say that they're not to blame. These people are absolutely incredible.
What you just described is a scenario where it almost doesn't even matter who you put in as police chief. If they have to spend all their time dealing with the commission over trivial matters, they don't have time to do their job, and they're not going to be successful.
That is correct. But no one wants to admit that because they want to keep these 3 extra commissions. Keep in mind, Oakland's only required to have 1 police commission. And I think we have maybe 5, at least 3, maybe 4. I lose track because all they do is they serve as a backdoor to defunding the police. And so we know that the progressives want to defund the police. Here's the evidence. Our mayor, Mayor Barbara Lee, who does she hire as her chief of staff? She hires Mia Saka Chen, who comes from Open Societies Foundation, George Soros, where they work to defund the police. And also, she was the former chief of staff of Nikki Fortunato Bass, who is now a Board of Supervisor member for Alameda County, and she helped co-author the plan to defund Oakland's police by 50% in 2019. So the actual policy person who wrote the policy, why does Barbara Lee hire her? Can anybody make it make sense? These people are police abolitionists and they're lying to our faces. But meanwhile, when you look at what's really happening, Oakland's police department is dismantled, demoralized, and defunded. We have less than 600 officers on the street. We have to cut our traffic division because we don't have enough officers to cover our 35 beats. And now I'm hearing that Gavin Newsom may call the California Highway Patrol, meaning that we're royally screwed if he does that.
What's going on with Barbara Lee? Because the people of Oakland had it with Sheng Tao. They understood that Sheng Tao had failed the city and that things were not getting better. They were getting worse. And she didn't have the skills necessary to put that city on the right track. Barbara Lee then comes in after Sheng Tao was recalled and essentially signs on to all of Sheng Tao's policies. Is there any discernible difference at all between Barbara Lee and Sheng Tao in terms of policy?
No, John. Barbara Lee, or Mayor Blah Blah Lee, as I call her, she's Sheng Tao 2.0. We told everyone this during the election. She has the same backers, same policies, same ecosystem of funders and supporters. The problem is that Lauren Taylor, who was an excellent choice for mayor, unfortunately for him, did not have the resolve or courage of conviction to stand behind the recall. And so he did not get any earned media or any credit for the recall. This is absent of take Brooke Jenkins. Brooke Jenkins, the current district attorney of San Francisco County, she was not only vocal about the recall, she worked for the recall. She actually was on the campaign itself. And this is the problem with Oakland. Our meek moderates are too cowardly to stand up. And so because of that, Barbara Lee has a hell of a name and legacy. People were seeking to restore some sort of integrity to the office, and they thought that her pedigree would serve us well. I mean, they were fools, in my opinion. But I just wish that we had run stronger campaigns and been more vocal about who she was. And I think that maybe, just maybe, the meek moderates of Oakland have finally learned their lesson and will come out guns blazing, as you can see from Councilmember Ken Houston, but calling out homeless people from Portland and viral videos telling them to go back to where they came from. This wouldn't have been possible just a few years ago. So we are making traction. Although it doesn't feel that way, we are making traction toward exposing the agenda. The problem is these people are still empowered, and I think the cake is already baked. So Oakland's going to be going bankrupt next year, as I predicted. That's just my prediction, and there's little we can do to stop it at this point, but hopefully we can at least blame the right people so none of them have ever worked for public office, not just in Oakland, but anywhere else in the United States of America.
Let's say your prediction comes true. Let's say Oakland goes bankrupt next year. Barbara Lee isn't going to take that one on the chin. She's going to look for someone else to blame. And my guess is, since Sheng Tao is up on trial, up on charges at the federal level, she's an easy target to blame. Do you think they're just all going to blame everything on Sheng and say that they had nothing to do with it?
You would think so, but no, that's not my prediction. Here's why. Sheng is past progressive policy. Progressives never admit they failed. It wasn't her policies, and everyone knows it. The progressives have passed the last 3 budgets, including the one that was passed by interim Mayor Kevin Jenkins. And so what I think they're going to do is they're going to blame the city charter. Oakland City Charter does link to dysfunction. If the mayor and city council are not on the same page, they both have the power to derail each other's agenda. However, they have been on the same page since 2022, and they passed 3 consecutive budgets that they have to own. So they're going to try to blame the city charter. They've already laid the groundwork for that. Here's another fun fact, John. You want to know the only person who ran on the charter amendment who identified issues with the charter? It's me when I ran for mayor in 2022. And guess what? The progressives laughed at me. They said, you don't need to change the charter. The charter's fine. And I'm like, no, it's not. It leads to dysfunction. Now they all of a sudden want to act like the charter is to blame for every single one of their missteps. It's sickening. It's disgusting. Hopefully people don't fall for it, but I don't know. Oakland voters don't have a best track record.
The city budget, making sure that the city didn't go bankrupt, was dependent largely on the sale of the Coliseum going through. That group that bought the Coliseum was late on payment after payment after payment. They were closely tied to Sheng Tao. What's going on with that right now?
Where is the money, Ray Bobbitt? That's the CEO of AASCG, African American Sports and Entertainment Group, who allegedly bought this place. You know what? I've always said that they're never going to pay. They're eventually going to do a bait and switch and ask for public funds. And that's exactly what I'm hearing right now, which is something, again, the progressives have always said. This is why they wanted to work with them, because they had private money. Now it's turning out that they may need public money. But here's another wrinkle that no one's talking about, John. Have you seen the story on the Mercury? I think it was Easter time, when they exposed that there is a significant environmental hazard. The Coliseum has been leaking toxic waste right into the estuary or creek, instead of going through the right permits to put it right through the sewer. And this was exposed. If they didn't disclose that, that is an absolute negligence and a lack of due diligence, which will allow AASCG to exit, this agreement, because they're going to have to incur significant expenses to redo the way that the water or whatever the sewage lines are. This has been happening for over 10 years. For over 10 years, John, the Oakland Coliseum has been leaking toxic waste into Oakland's fresh water sources, and not a single environmentalist has said a word, and they knew about it.
At no point during this deal did this deal seem kosher. I remember right at the very beginning, when this thing was first announced, and Sheng would go on television and she'd speak at these press conferences, and she would always make sure to point out that she didn't work for the group that was buying the Coliseum. And I always thought that was strange. Like, what? Who would assume that you work for them? You're the mayor of the city and you're selling it to them. Why do you have to keep telling us that you're not part of that group? Yet she seemed to do it every time she talked about this group.
You're a very astute observer, John. Yeah, it's called a guilty conscience. Here's another wrinkle people may not know. The reason I believe that Oakland's going to go bankrupt, and I try to keep this as brief as I can, I do have a program, Gotham Oakland. By the way, I no longer run Neighbor Together Oakland. Bonta shut us down with lawfare, focusing on us instead of all the other nonprofits that get federal funds that waste it demonstrably and steal it. But they focus on us to shut us down for lack of following some tax papers. But anyway, I digress. Gotham Oakland is my podcast, and I talk all about this. But here's what happened. The Cole lawsuit, and I'm not going to go to the background, but there's a 9-year battle, legal saga around coal shipping to Oakland. We lost that lawsuit, the city of Oakland. But we didn't just lose that lawsuit. Another sub-leasee went bankrupt because of the deal not going through. They're suing the city of Oakland for $1 billion in Kentucky. They're very likely to win that case because we lost the other case. And part of the central focus of the financial disclosure is all about the Coliseum. So the judge is asking to see paperwork on the Coliseum because, as you recall, we sold our half for $25 million less than the A's sold their half, and there was never even an appraisal done. Now we know why there was no appraisal done, because they were hiding the environmental impact. It looks to me like the city of Oakland was trying to hide assets. That's what it's looking like. And this hypothesis is getting stronger by the day because the city of Oakland refused to give any documents whatsoever related to the Coliseum. And get this, they claimed in court under oath that there was not a single written document about this sale of a Coliseum that they could give to court, that it was all done verbally over the phone. It is preposterous. These criminals need to absolutely be exposed. And yeah, man, it's bad in Oakland. I think we're one of the most corrupt cities in the United States of America.
Speaking of which, what's going on with the trial of Sheng Tao? We haven't heard much from her lately.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I do know that there's another wrinkle with San Leandro City Councilman Brian Azevedo. I believe that he will be formally indicted in the next month or so. That for sure he's going to snitch. I also know that, I don't know, man. Who knows? They go back to court in a month or so, and we'll see what's up.
And last question before you go. With all of her faults, one of the things that Sheng Tao did when she was mayor is she made herself available to the press. She was always on the local news. She was always on local television. She didn't do herself any favors, yet she did show up for the cameras whenever they wanted to book her on TV. You don't see much from Barbara Lee. Is she available? Is she talking? What's going on with her?
Barbara Lee is like Joe Biden. They're keeping her in the basement. And they bring out weekends from Bernie every once in a while for a food photo op or some sort of puff piece. And also, every video they release on Instagram, it's obvious from anyone who edits that she did 50 takes to get it right. This is a person who could easily die in office. She's knocking on 80. She doesn't have the knowledge, skills, or ability to lead an executive role. She's never done this in her life. And she was put there as a puppet for the progressive to continue the destructive agenda. So she's just there. She's a puppet. She's not the mayor. The mayor is a collective consortium of progressives, including Quinn Delaney, major funder, the public sector labor union, and the Democratic Party.
Do you think she's having fun as mayor, as someone who came from a safe congressional seat that she had for decades, where she got to move up the ranks in Congress because of her seniority? She was celebrated by everyone in town. She was close to leadership. That was a fun job for her. I can't imagine her having fun right now.
No, she also led all of Congress in international travel funded by business people. So she was always in luxury hotels traveling the world. Now, I don't think she's having fun. I'm hearing from lots of people in City Hall that she's questioning this seriously. But who knows? That's all hearsay. I can't speak for Mayor Blah Blah Lee. But hopefully she's not having fun because her city's a dumpster fire.
Well, and that's what happened to her old boss, Ron Dellums. He was in Congress for a long time, came back, ran for mayor, and decided real fast he didn't like it.
Yeah, well, history seems to repeat itself, sadly. Hopefully Oakland's waking up, and next election cycle they'll be electing a mayor that knows what they're doing.
The podcast is Gotham Oakland. You can download it wherever you download your favorite podcasts, and you can follow him on X at Seneca Speaks 21. Seneca Scott, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, John. Can't wait till next time.
It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show on this Jimmy Buffett Friday. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. I would imagine that many of you are going to watch the Dodger game tonight as the Dodgers go for the sweep against the Milwaukee Brewers. Yesterday, they played at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and based on everything that I saw on social media from people who were at the game, being let out at rush hour in downtown Los Angeles was a complete nightmare. It was bumper to bumper for a full hour after the game ended from people trying to get out of Chavez Ravine and onto the freeway so they can get to dinner and they can get home. So let's hope it's not quite as bad tonight as they go for the sweep against the Milwaukee Brewers. Yesterday was the big debate over at the New York City mayoral election, where the socialist candidate Mamdani is way ahead of his nearest competitor, who is the former governor, Andrew Cuomo. And now there's a lot of pressure on Curtis Sliwa, who is the Republican candidate, the guardian angel, the guy that's always running around in the red beret, to get out of the race. So that way all of the anti-Mamdani vote can go to the same person, which in this case would be the former governor, Andrew Cuomo. So far, Curtis Sliwa says no dice. That is not going to happen. He is in the race. He won the Republican nomination. No one can force him out. He has no interest in getting out of the race. He says he has no plans on getting out of the race. He's in it to win it, despite the fact that he's coming in third place in all the polls, all the most recent polls in that race, and he's not looking like a viable candidate, but you have egos involved. It's New York City. He used to be a radio talk show host on our sister station, WABC. For years and years and years, he used to do the morning show with a guy by the name of Ron Kuby, Curtis and Kuby in the morning. They were on 5 hours a day. It was a 5-hour morning show. And they dominated mornings in New York City on the AM dial for years and years and years. And then after that show went away, he did his own syndicated talk show at night. We even carried it on KABC in Los Angeles for quite a while. And if you go back into the 1980s, the 1990s, he was a regular on the TV daytime talk show circuit. You'd watch Geraldo and the rest of them. And Curtis Sliwa was a familiar voice talking about violence in the streets of New York City. At one point, the mob even tried to kill him. He was shot a number of times in a New York City taxi cab after he got on the wrong side of the mob. So I guess from Curtis's point of view, he's a tough guy who's been around a long time, and he is not going to be told by anyone to get out of the race. He's going to do his own thing. Well, fine. It looks like now there's a perfect storm in New York City for a socialist candidate to win the mayor's office in that city. I can't imagine the results from that election would be good for the people of New York City, or anyone for that matter. But for whatever reason, the business interests in New York City just stood by and allowed it to happen. They could have done something about it had they all consolidated behind one candidate. That didn't happen. So right now, they're in big trouble. All right, that's going to do it for me this week, but we'll be back on Monday at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show. See you then.